Very kindly. But let's go ahead and get this meeting started and call to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the Secretary will note the roll. We have 8 here tonight, 1 absent. And I'd like to make an announcement that we did have an executive session for personnel prior to the board meeting starting. And now, before we go on to the next little bit, at the last meeting, one of the things I pride myself on, and the board generally prides themselves on, is the respect we show to one another and to the public and back towards us, and we do appreciate that. In the middle of the last meeting, I became very short and curt to the point of being rude to Mr. Parker. There's a lot of people that know me that say that's nothing unusual, but it's never my intention. And so I wanted to publicly apologize to you for that and to everybody here. And I'll try and keep myself under better control going forward. So now we're going to start our public comment. Everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Everybody sees what's on the agenda. If anybody has any questions on the agenda whatsoever on things that are on the agenda, now is your opportunity to talk about it or ask questions. If we introduce new business, if we talk about new things, we'll give you a chance to have public comment on those things as well at that time. So does anybody have anything on the agenda that they'd like to ask about? I don't care if you have a form filled out or not. All right. Very good. Would you like to take over?
Yes, please.
Boss one.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. You can actually. Good evening. Tonight we have a couple discussion items we'd like to bring in front of the board. The first item that we have is the supplemental contract, rubric, and matrix discussion. If you recall, at our last meeting, we had a lot of our supplemental contracts to be approved, and there was some discussion amongst the board as far as how that matrix works, how that rubric works, and how we come up with the numbers appropriate to fit the particular club, activity, sport, etc. So what I did, I've asked Gary Dorenzo, and I saw Megan Delaney's here as well, who works with us in coming up with this matrix. And I thought it was good to take a little bit of our time tonight to describe that for you as far as the rubric and the supplemental contract matrix, so that you can better understand the process, because we're constantly having supplementals approved on a monthly basis as we move through the different seasons. So if Mr. Dorenzo could come up, please, and Ms. Delana, that would be great.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And like Dr. Shirk said, we just want to talk a little bit about first the history of the supplemental contracts and how we are here at this point in time. First, I want to go back to 1993, and I know that's a long way, but there was never a mechanism for supplemental contracts other than it was really at the whim of an administrator and the board to implement new programs, et cetera. So during that time, even though a collective bargaining agreement was done and completed, there would be additions, there would be new interest, et cetera. So those were brought to a building administrator who would then move it to the superintendent and then ultimately to the board. And really what was happening was that anytime something was added, it was kind of, we want to take two things away and add one thing, et cetera. And so for the longest time, we really did not move our programs forward, that we became stagnant from the sense that, there might be new interests for students, but to get something introduced, they didn't want to take something away that was already operational, et cetera. So that's kind of the history until the collective bargaining agreement in 2015, which is the current collective bargaining agreement. So what the Education Association and administration, we sat down and tried to come up with a mechanism to take the dollar amount, which really there's a dollar amount, and you can see that I provided that on the back at the bottom of this sheet here. So what that dollar amount, the charge was for our Education Association to go back to their membership and put point values, what they felt was fair and equitable to each of the programs that were that we already had implemented in the collective bargaining agreement. So as we negotiated through that, the union, I'll call you the union.
That's good.
Went back and developed a rubric, and the point totals were put to each of the positions, just like most other districts do the same thing as well. And I'll let Megan speak to the rubric when we get to that part of it. And again, each position was evaluated. It was based on a bunch of factors, and she'll touch base on that. At the end of that process, that was included in the 2015 agreement. One of the biggest changes the largest change was that each year on an annual basis, then we would come back to this and look at these positions. Are they still viable? Is there interest from students? Is there something new, et cetera? And so on an annual basis, members of the Education Association, members from administration, we sit down and we look at it, and the dollars don't change, but the positions may. And that's what you saw at the last meeting, was those supplemental changes, because maybe different times out of school hours changed for the individual doing those positions, et cetera. So that's kind of a thumbnail, quick sketch of the historical perspective, and I'll let Megan talk to the rubric a little bit, to how they came up with that and how it morphed into what it is today.
Thank you. When I first started here in Pottsgrove 13 years ago, I came in, this is just an example of how it worked, and I brought DECA to the school district, and I said to the principal at the time, I would like to have DECA, and she looked at me and said, that'd be great, 2 points. And that was it. That was how it got decided. And it didn't have any correlation to how much work was put in or how many students were affected, or it could have been the right amount, it could have been the wrong, too high, too low, it could have been anything. And it was just not a really viable system. And we stagnated because admin and the union would fight all the time. Admin would say, we want to add these positions, and the union would say, well, if you add that, then we want this. And then we would butt heads, and nothing ever happened. And it was really just not a productive situation. So several years ago, we got together and we said, well, we need to change it. So we put a committee together, and I believe there were about 9, maybe 11 people from across the district, from sports to music to just pretty much everything across the district. And it took us, I would say it was 6 months, maybe 9 months, of interviewing people, and what do you do, and how many students do you have, and how much time does it take, and how much time do you spend on this outside, and weekends, and travel, and et cetera, et cetera. And although it's probably, and I can assure you it's not perfect, it is at least a system by which we can now look at any supplemental, whether it's new or whether it's existing, and it needs to be altered and say, oh, when you started this organization, you only had 15 students with you. Now you have 60, okay? That deserves, and you're now working instead of, 2 hours a week for 16 weeks, you're now working at 6 hours a week for 16 weeks with more students, so more responsibility. So we can actually look at this rubric and adjust up or down based on as life changes. You know, as we all know, some supplementals are really, you know, they grow and they're popular, and sometimes things fade and are not as, you know, we're just not using them as much anymore. So it's an opportunity for us to be flexible, and that's what we do. So in every spring, then, I put out an email to my membership, and I say, if anybody has any changes that they would like to see, whether it's in their supplemental existing, or if they are starting a new supplemental. You know, I've got something new, I've had this club going for a year, I've got these kids, I'd like to make it a bigger deal, and then they submit that to us. And it's a chance then for us to go and look at everything and all the changes that have happened and say, okay, well, you know, this makes sense, and this person has a lot more, or this club, I think, you know, this person's really done a lot with this club, we'd like to add it in. And then we can go back to the, like Gary said, and say, well, this organization hasn't had anybody, hasn't been running for 5 years. Why do we have money sitting there doing nothing for 5 years when we could take that money and give it to, you know, a new club to start up? And it's one of the great parts about it is it's the district and the union working together. The district says we want to see new supplementals added. You know, our side says we would like to see new supplementals changed, and we work together on it. So that's how that works. But I mean, you can look at it and you can see. I do want to add that we are putting together a committee to look at this again and make some adjustments to it, because it is certainly not a perfect document. After 3 years of this, we can see where there needs to be some changes, but the association is putting a committee together to do that.
So I have a question in regards to allotting points based on time that's taken to run that club or activity. Is the time, is the total time that the staff person puts into it what's counted, or is it the time that, all right, your contract day ends here and you're not, you know, leaving the building till here working with this club? How is the time looked at? Because I know sometimes they have to leave early for like team sports and things like that.
Generally speaking, it's time outside of your contract. You know, for sports, you know, maybe a 20 minutes before the contract ends kind of thing. But if your activity meets late at night, or has multiple field trips over the weekend, or that type of thing, those are the things that are taken into account when it looks at point value.
On the matrix sheet we got here that has all the different breakdowns and such like that, how often is this updated, and how accurate is this?
It's accurate that every year we do the annual review, and if there's, you know, a program that is eliminated, it's taken off there. If there's one added, it's placed in there, and that's all based on the point total. That point total is designated with a dollar amount. So those points then would add up. You know, let's just say the first one, cheerleading, 37 points times whatever that multiplier is. That's what equals that supplemental. And you could see the old pay. There's a difference there. There was some that were additional and some that were subtracted. So that's why we do the annual review every year.
I'm sorry. So this should be as of this year.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, then you have issues. Looking just at the first couple, art club, according to here, 5 points. Art club's getting paid $1,190 that we approved. That's a 10 point. Well, you got down 0 here. The next one, Arts and Clubs Club, which is the 5 points. Okay, so if they're both 5 points on this chart, one's getting paid $1,190 and the other one's getting paid $595. Because that's what I'm looking at on my sheet.
0 means what they're getting paid now.
Right. 0 means they're not getting paid
They're not
anything.
getting paid.
They've been taken out. There's nobody fulfilling that supplemental.
Well, the supplemental we approved has Art Club, Cindy Schreier, 9/11/2018 for $1,190.40. We approved that last meeting. Art and Crafts Club, Lisa Bonobo, Rodenball, $595.25 approved
Yep.
at the last meeting.
Adjusted.
So either this is not accurate and we're not supposed to be paying these people, or this is not accurate and it shouldn't say 0. And that's just the first couple. I went down I randomly just picked a few, and DECA. We approved DECA for Alexandra Kriebel for $2,261 when the sheet says $2,142. Detention Monitor High School, we approved it for $1,785, but the sheet says $1,547. So I'm kind of confused as to why it's not accurate.
This is the difference. That's not,
Right there.
so that's what we approved.
Right, no, 22 something.
Oh, so this needs to be updated.
Well, then the multiplier, maybe the multiplier is not accurate within the Excel system.
I would have to look at
We have to look at that.
So this sheet's not accurate.
Apparently not.
Well, I can't.
The formula, the point totals are accurate. So apparently the multiplier is not.
Which is the more?
The multiplier would be the dollar amount that a point is given. So let's just say the dollar amount is, for 1 point would be $119. That's the multiplier.
Okay, so if.
So the points
if
should
the-
be accurate.
If the points are accurate, and on one, it says 5 points and we pay $595, and the other one says 5 points and we're paying $1,190, did we pay too much or not enough? Or is the points just completely wrong?
Well, the one point's $119.
Which one is that specific?
so
Art,
500.
just right off the bat.
That's-
Art
that's the
Club
500
and
one.
Arts and Crafts. They're just right on the top 2 people. I just went to the top 2. Art Club, 5 points. It says 0 here. We paid $1,100. My guess is because you just didn't have someone at the time. Art and Crafts Club, the second one down, 5 points, $595. That's what I'm confused on. Is there something missing on the points?
Well, 5 points is worth $595.
Then why is the other one? The other one should be 10 points then. But it
It's
says
not.
5.
That's a mistake.
Right,
It's a mistake.
right.
All right, I would recommend going through because they're all wrong. Like many, many of them are wrong. And if you give that to, if I had known, I actually would not have approved last week the payouts if I knew all the numbers were incorrect. I mean, it's difficult as a person that's trying to do the budget. You turn around and say, we're going to approve this much, and this is how much it is. Okay, I approve it, but this is how much it was, what we thought it was. Well, they got to be right. They got to be the same.
Well, we will go back and make sure it's updated. That's.
All right, thanks for that. I think there were some more comments around, I thought, you had something, Scott, you want to say? Or am I trying to miss it? Okay. All right. So we have the presentation, we now understand better, because when we got the information last time, it said, well, this club grew from something to something, and so we're asking for more money. I didn't have the rubric, I had no idea what it was based on, and the numbers, just because I didn't see the pattern didn't mean there wasn't one, but it was indecipherable to me on the information we got. This, formulas and charts, that's all good stuff. So thank you very much.
They have to be right to be good charts.
Well,
Yeah, they're not good if they're not right.
Right.
so, thank you very much for this. Now, we've approved apparently numbers that are out of whack,
Correct.
so we need to fix that. Do we need to make a motion? Because we're going to have to amend.
I got to put my mic on. I would suggest that, why don't we approve a revised one when they come back to us? There's nothing really to approve tonight. The minutes will reflect that there was a question, it appears there's some inaccuracies, and Gary, I'd expect that or Megan, whoever's going to present this, we get a new updated matrix, and we'll approve that, I guess, at our next meeting.
Okay. That works.
And Megan, I don't have it in front of me, so I may not completely understand. I don't want a problem with your bargaining unit. You'll get the word out to the folks that there may be some necessitated changes.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody out there thinks they got X, and next week they're going to get Y, I guess.
right. If there are any issues, I will take care of them. Absolutely.
And I had one other thing. This may not be for you guys at all. It may be more for here or is Dr. Ziegler in the audience? I don't know if he's here or not. He's not here tonight. If you could check, I know we approved last year And we usually approve the academic challenge team coach, which is the quiz bowl.
It is there.
It's there? It's just, I didn't see it.
High school non-sports.
It's for the very first.
High school non-sports, okay.
No, not that.
Any other questions?
And Gary, or Bill or Dave, whoever, when do we make payments on these supplementals?
Mid-year for the all-year clubs and at the end of
So
the year.
there's no harm yet in terms of somebody getting money
Nobody's-
or
No.
Dave having to alter the payment checks for next week or anything? Okay.
I just want to, thank, Megan for coming and helping explain it. And really, I also, want to thank the board for their due diligence as far as, looking into this and looking at the discrepancies that you found, because I found, organizations don't get better unless they find things, they make corrections, and they move forward. So I thank you both for coming tonight, and presenting the overall philosophy, the numbers things I know we can straighten out, and we'll do that as timely as we can in the next couple of weeks and get that back here. So, thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Moving on to 4.2, special education staffing update. This is going to be another team effort tonight when we talk about it. This particular concern that we have. Since the start of school, we've had over 30 special education students join our school. And it has, had Ms. Pacito and Dr. Cantor, Dr. Harney, Dave Nestor, Ron Linke have all put their heads together, if you will, because these students come to us, some with some great needs, and others, just need minor support. But what I'm going to ask really is Kate to come up, and I know Dave's already at the table, and Bob's here to answer any questions. But we need to, hire some new people that we didn't budget for, because we need to support these IEP students at various levels as they come in and as we process them and we reevaluate their IEPs. So, Dr. Harney, did you have anything from the HR piece that you'd like to add, and then we'll just go around the horn?
Just as soon as these surface, Ms. Pacito and Mr. Cantor come directly and say, we just received these students, it's in their IEP. What we did initially was put substitutes in those positions till we could do our own evaluation of the IEP, needs of the students, and so forth. And their team did a really good job very quickly trying to get to the point where we knew what we were going to need from a staffing point. So we still have currently some people out there that are substitutes in places that we may need to go to full-time. And that's, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Pacito, who has more of the detail on that.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. As Dr. Shirk said, we've had a number of students move into the district with some more significant needs than others. In the effort to get to zero this year, we carefully did not pad the budget in any excessive way. So we've spent some time analyzing the needs of the students, acclimating them to our building and our programs. And kudos to our teachers and staff. They're really, and the office staff as well, just really doing everything that they need to do to support all of our students. The number is actually closer to 45 now, which is an update of new students with needs that we weren't anticipating and that we do need to program for. We are in a position where we feel like we've collected enough data to make recommendations for some staffing positions that, quite frankly, are related services in the IEPs, and we don't really have a lot of leeway to negotiate there. When I say staff, I'm not talking teachers, although these students are all on teacher caseloads and in instructional classrooms. We think that we're okay there. We're talking support staff. Many of the students, 7 of the students, as I speak right now in this moment, have one-to-one student aides as related services in their IEPs. All of the needs are being met right now, as Dr. Harney said, through use of substitutes. But to be fair and to continue to meet the needs in the best way possible, that's something that we're going to be recommending at the next meeting, that we hire these 7 support staff to meet the needs of the students that have moved in. And if there are any updates between now and then, I'll be sure to communicate that to the board.
Any questions for Ms. Bucito? Then I'm going to get to Mr. Nestor as well.
No time. Please go first.
Yeah, how do we group students that are in similar grades that we're keeping in the district? In other words, are we grouping them together where possible and making use of staff in that sense versus having an aide in each classroom?
We are absolutely doing that to the extent that it makes sense based on the needs of the students. But we're using our staff flexibly. We have a number of instructional aides, but then we do indicate in the IEPs and put into practice if the student is in a small group at this time and doesn't need the one-to-one aide, how can we not be wasting valuable time and resources? So then we're reallocating those staff to other places in the building where the support is needed. We're definitely doing that.
Kate, how are these staff members trained? Are they trained? Do they come in with any kind of special education background? I just know that, I've heard over the years, and I witnessed it personally years ago, where some of these aides were, just sort of sitting around not doing much. And, I actually witnessed one sitting in the back reading the newspaper while the class just went crazy. And so I'm just curious, these kids need the aides, and they don't need someone to be sitting on their phone or reading the newspaper.
Exactly.
And the teachers need them too.
And the teachers need them too. We've, over the course of the past few years, we have changed the supervision and the professional development plan for support staff. We offer between 20 and 30 hours of professional development here in district, and then we've also been allowing and encouraging our support staff to take advantage of offerings at the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. A couple of years ago, I worked with Chris Coberlin, who is one of the TAC team, the training and consulting team leaders at the MCIU, and we developed a series of trainings that they offer annually now for support staff and paraprofessionals. So we're running sessions here in district that I facilitate, that Dr. Cantor facilitates, that some of our teacher leaders, school psychologists facilitate, our social workers, and our behavior analysts do a lot of training, formally and informally. When we onboard new support staff, we're making sure that they're linking with the case manager so they really understand the needs of the specific student or students that they're working with. So it's an ongoing process. We feel like we're in a much better spot than we were before. And then, of course, there's the GCN trainings that are required by the district, child abuse, all of those things.
With needing additional instructional assistance, bless you, when those particular students aren't in instruction, whether they're, recess or lunch or whatever, what's the feasibility, I guess maybe this is more of a Mr. Nestor question, of using those instructional aides for lunchroom supervision, for recess supervision, in place of what we currently have? If we're adding staff for instructional support, using those staff during non-instructional times to do things that others are doing for supervision.
Well, if I could, I'll answer the first part of that question because I want to make an important distinction. We have instructional assistants in the district and we have student assistants in the district. So they have different roles and responsibilities. The 7 individuals that we're talking about now are student assistants. So that means with the student during transition and unstructured times.
Yeah, sorry, just the one question. The start of school, that's one of those, it's a term, but when you say the start of school, are you literally talking about sort of 2 weeks ago, 45 in 2 weeks, or does it mean since the budget was passed and we closed the budget in June?
July 1.
July 1st.
Yes, July
Okay.
1. Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'd like to get an opportunity to speak, obviously, with Mr. Nestor because we need to be able to fund these student assistants that we need based on the IEPs. So I wanted Dave to give you an overview of how we can make that work within this year's current budget.
Thank you, Dr. Shirk. Just as an advertisement, these types of unexpected things happen every year, and this is one of the reasons why sound fund balance and a sound capital reserve and things like that are necessary. We have another neighboring school district that incurred a significant amount of money to remediate mold this fall. That was not anticipated as well. So, these are things that we face every year. In this area, I would say we have a couple options on how to fund this. One, because we tightened our budget pretty tight this past year to get to a zero, I'm not certain how much surplus we're going to have this year to contribute to this. However, we do still have a strong fund balance, and we do have some funds available to us to draw down from the state under our school-based access program, which we could use to cover any shortfalls that we may have in the budget. So we should be okay this year, and we'll incorporate these things in our budget for next year, assuming they're continuing.
Thank you very much for that. Getting such a large change, 45, new students with IEPs is a significant number. For reference, can you give me a ballpark of what we normally see in a given year? Is it generally a 5, 10? Is it, normally 25? Where are we in a normal year? Because we have kids that hit 21 and move on, or we have other things that happen and move out. What are we normally looking at?
I can answer that, if that's okay. I would say actually, just straight numbers, this is pretty similar to the trend that we've seen in recent years, this time of the year. Lots of student enrollment, even now, even today, enrolling students. So I would say the 45 alone is not the number that is inconsistent. It's the needs that are associated with some of those 45 that are just more costly. We have different tiers that we use in the funding process, and so I would say that some of these students are higher tier in terms of the funding structure.
So those 7, you're talking about the one-to-ones, the 7. Now, are those going to be full-time 180 days?
At this point, it appears that they will be full-time 180 days. Obviously, we're progress monitoring and collecting data all the time to make sure that we're, meeting student needs in the most financially responsible way. So it'll be an ongoing analysis, but I am recommending that we employ the staff members as full-time permanent employees, not substitutes.
All right. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add to the board, because I asked Kate and her department to do this. Are there students coming from anywhere specifically? Is it, and they're not. They're coming. They're not. You can't say they're coming from Philly or they're coming from Navy. They're coming from all over southeastern PA. So that's not really that wasn't. I thought maybe, well, let's find out where they're coming from. Is there any correlation there? And there's not. So they're coming all over from southeastern PA.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask. But then also with that, do we know if they're coming specifically to Pottsgrove, or Pottsgrove is just one of many and they just happen to land here? I mean, are they choosing to come here specifically because of their child? Do we know that? Or as opposed to just simply, no, I'm moving here because relatives or, job brought me here?
I don't think I can answer that in
I was
global
just
terms.
curious
Yeah.
if we've become a district of choice for this. That's why I was just curious. So. If we should
The
be
parents I've
planning-
interacted with are very happy,
Okay.
but I don't know that I can answer the question directly. Yeah, I don't have that.
So we're doing too good of a job, Kate. Come on now.
Just as an aside here, being in real estate, I do hear, a lot of people talking. And more than once, I've heard people say, well, I need to move to Pottsgrove because my child has special needs. We're known. So.
And I will say, I did have in my notes to bring up, and so joking aside, I did have opportunity to review the full cyclical monitoring report from last year, I guess it was. And I've seen a number of them, and I know how the state can be, and I was quite impressed. So I do believe you and your department are doing a great job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Could you maybe give just a little bit of background on the cyclical board so that people that aren't specialists can keep up?
I can, but do you want to, you can give a better
Sure.
feel for what was done at the district.
Sure. So I'll be brief, and I guess if you want me to elaborate, just let me know. Every 6 years, approximately, every district in LEA in the state of Pennsylvania goes through a really extensive monitoring process that is facilitated by the Bureau of Special Education Advisor through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And it was a year-long monitoring process. There were lots of steps involved. We produced records. They looked at the quality of our IEPs, our programming. They were in classrooms, making sure that we were doing everything the way that the IEPs were written, conducted parent interviews and surveys, teacher interviews, student interviews, an administrative interview. There were lots and lots of steps to this. And after the year went by, we got a report that was about this thick of the findings, and of the 37 areas that were monitored, there were 3 rather small technical things that were easy fixes for recommendation, nothing that had any impact on the quality of the programming, a couple of little paperwork things that we were pretty able to easily clean up. So it was a lot of time and effort from a lot of people in the department, but I think that it was a good learning process for everyone, and definitely validated some of the things that we've been working hard at.
So it's once every 6 years, happy with that? And it was a year-long process. For you and your staff, in terms of additional work in this 6th year, in this, you know, not even counting what you did ahead of time to submit the stuff to start, how many hours a week did you spend on this? Approximately, I don't, you know, just within sort of a reasonable amount.
Just for the monitoring process itself,
Yes.
I would say an average of 10.
So that's just trying to get the idea across that, you know, there's lots of things. We talk about why do we have so many administrators, and I'm one of them. I'll raise my hand. These kinds of things are an additional unseen, unfunded mandate. This data has to be collected, it has to be reported, and all of the stuff that goes into collecting this data has to be, the records have to be maintained, they have to be accessible, they have to be maintained for whatever the life is, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And so that's part of why there's a huge administrative burden and why this thing adds up. And there's things like that throughout the school.
Yes.
So I understand, I still don't like it, but I understand, and thank you for that explanation.
Thank you.
I did want to, you spoken before about adapting your group to bring in more responsibility in-house as opposed to going out, and just wondering if we are seeing a trend and there's talk that maybe that really should be pushed along. I'm just wondering have you thought about that? Because if we're getting more and more people coming into the district and you know that there's ways that we could do it in-house, I mean, just something to...
Are you speaking about our most recent conversations around intensive emotional support?
Yes, and
I indicated to the board last year that we were recommending, which is actually on tonight's agenda, that we engage in a contract with Cottage 7 Academy in the community, right, for the intensive emotional supports, with the intention of doing some research about what it would take financially, resource-wise, for us to build those programs internally. And we've started looking at that. There are a lot of things to consider in terms of space, staff, both professional and paraprofessional staff, and probably administrative staff. I think that it's definitely on my radar. It's an undertaking I personally have a lot of interest in, and I think that there are some benefits that could come for our district, but it's something that we would need to do very well and would take some time, and I think that we should have additional conversation around what direction the board would like us to take for that, knowing that there will be costs involved either way. Yeah.
If we're seeing a trend like this, and it takes 4 or 5 years to develop this, in 4 or 5 years, we may absolutely need to do this, and maybe more cost-effective, or just be better for the students to have that in-house, but just, it's definitely worth conversation.
If the board would like, I could certainly put together, at least to start, a rudimentary list of things that we would need to consider and potential costs that would be associated with it, so that we could talk that out sooner than later, if that's something you'd like me to do, or Dr. Shirk would like.
If we can see that in comparison with Mr. Nestler's help to what savings there would be from bringing, so here's the big upfront cost, but this is what it'll look like cost-wise, 3, 4, 5 years from now. I had a question on 6.2 Cottage 7. We kind of started delving into that. Do you want me to jump to that now or wait, bring Kate back up?
Just one more point. I'd just like to have Mr. Nestor, if you would, just talk about access, like what that, just a little more definition so the board understands what it is and the money that's available and how and why and how we can use that for this particular area, this cause.
Right. We've been enrolled in the school-based access program for 15 years or so. But what it allows is we're able to charge medical-related services to the school-based access program. It's funded by Department of Public Welfare. It's federal funding. So when we do certain services for a special needs student who is registered appropriately in this program, we keep time of that, and we submit it, and we can bill the state for that. Whatever money comes out of that, it's a very convoluted process. The actual procedure, which could be, just to give you an example, it could be a one-on-one aid working with the child for a medically related issue. Maybe there's a feeding tube, or maybe there's some other type of medical situation involved. It could be a speech teacher performing services for a child who needs speech and language services, things like that. So similar to what a doctor billing, we would submit a charge to the state for that service. Based on some miraculous calculation, we get a little bit of money put into an account for us. At the end of the year, then there's a reconciliation process where we take all of our services that we've provided, all the costs of services we provide, plus some related services like transportation and other things, and we report that. And then the state will, actually it's not the state, it's the third-party vendor that they use to evaluate it. They reconcile it and they give us a supplemental allocation. Right now, we're getting, this past year we received in total about $288,000. We're budgeting, let me back up one step. We got about $288,000 put into our account, if you will, at the state level. We don't have that money. It's there for us to draw down as we need. We budgeted about $350,000 to $400,000 of drawdown a year. So there is some funds still at the state level. Beyond that, we don't exhaust it every year. So we can draw it down for special ed services to above and beyond what we have done in the past. So a new child moving in with a one-to-one aid would certainly be an approved cost that we could draw down for. An outplaced student could also be something we could draw down for.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions for our team?
Sorry, one more for Ms. Bacido. I know this would be on the parents, but if these student supports are for, or when we have student supports for emotional behavioral issues, do we encourage, and do we have, different districts have different open door, closed door, for mental health services. So do we encourage parents looking into wraparound services that would bring in possibly TSS to support the student and be then paid for through medical assistance?
We do, and we have a number of students in the district who do have support staff at TSS through a community-based agency that the district then is not responsible for funding. If the agency knows that the district has a responsibility to do that, they're more likely to fund the service in the home, as you know. But we do have the grant through Creative Health Services. So we have liaisons in each of our buildings, and we're linking families with wraparound services on a weekly basis. So that definitely is happening. Of course, we can't rely on that if the service is needed and that's not available. We have to provide it.
Okay, thank you all for contributing, appreciate that, and we look to have that on the board agenda, those new hires, in our first meeting in October. Okay, moving on to action items for personnel. We're asking the board on 5.1 to approve the professional staff appointments as submitted.
I'd like to make a motion to combine all personnel.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments on 5.1 through 5.6? It is 6. Yes, 5.1 through 5.6. Questions, comments?
On 5.5, what does the elementary grade coordinator do, West Pottsgrove Encore? What does that position entail?
That's like, Mr. Vorse, I'm going to ask, that's the department head for West Pottsgrove for, is it a specific grade or is it for the entire building?
I believe it's for a specific grade. Each of our grade levels has a grade level lead or chair, if you will, within the building. So they're putting together, or they're running the, putting together the professional learning, getting the data teams to meet. Oftentimes they're meeting with the principal through what is called building leadership meetings. So those are occurring before or after school as well.
So what does Encore reflect? Are you talking about all the Encores? So we're paying somebody to coordinate music, gym, art, and health, maybe, I don't know, in the one building?
That's correct.
Okay.
So just like there's grade level coordinators, there's also one that does the Encore for the particular building. So that individual is working with all the Encore individuals within that particular building.
Okay, I'll be voting no. I won't, I have a lot more questions that I think we can ask regarding positions such as this and others through the Personnel Committee, but I will certainly be voting no to this.
Okay. Mr. President, just an operational question.
I'm sorry, no.
Thank you.
I'll get you on the back end.
Not a problem, sir.
So we have,
5.5. We'll have 5.5 so we can vote no, and then we'll do the others.
all right.
It doesn't have to vote no from
It doesn't matter, it's going to be 7-1.
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, so noted, thank you. Okay.
Moving on to action items for business. 6.1, the Pottsgrove Middle School Roof Replacement Project. We're asking the board, we recommend action to ratify the payment of the invoice for the Pottsgrove Middle School Roof Replacement Project as presented.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So I'll ask if there's any questions or comments. If not, I have one. That's just, we still have 26, 27% left to be invoiced. 676,000 out of 2.4 million. what all has to be done yet on the roof.
We have some metal flashing that, around small eaves areas to be replaced. Temporary flashing went up, so I'm waiting for the custom-made material to come, and then also a final walkthrough to make sure everything was put into proper standards by the manufacturer.
Okay, so this really represents retainage, plus some work that needs to be done.
We've received a supplemental invoice, which will be processing in the next couple of days for about $400,000. The retainage will be about $240,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you very much. I'm sorry, does anybody else have any other questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. All right, so noted.
Moving on to compensation agreement for Cottage 7. We're asking the board to approve compensation agreement with Cottage 7 for the 18-19 school year for an intensive emotional support as presented.
We have a motion and a second. I know we have at least one question.
I might be misreading this, Ms. Pacito. We budgeted $200 per day, but we're now being charged $385 a day. Were we planning on the students being at a different program? Is this miswritten? Did they up the tuition almost double? What's going on?
I'm going to respond because of the budgetary impact. The budget wasn't updated at the end of the year to reflect 2 children in this program. We had 7 children budgeted to attend Cottage 7 in the budget. We had 2 children placed in this program in May, April, May, and we did not update the budget at that point in time. So to reflect those 2 students.
There are 2 separate programs within Cottage 7. One is emotional support and one is intensive emotional support, and that's a half-day therapeutic program with therapeutic staff in the classroom all day. So that's the reason for the 2-tiered pricing structure. The $200 a day represents the emotional support, and the intensive ES is the therapeutic.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we have a
Yeah, just a second. If I'm reading this correctly, it says we included 7 positions at $200 a day, which means you would prepared for $1,400 a day? Yeah. And
Yes.
if you prepare, but now we're only spending.
No, we have 7 children in placement. 2 of them are going to be charged at $385 a day.
So there are 7 kids in placement, 2 are at $385.
The rest are at $200.
And the rest are at $200.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was doing the math in my head and I couldn't get your numbers. Yeah.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All questions asked and answered. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Okay, moving on to action items for education. 7.1, conference attendance. We're asking you to approve the conference attendance item as submitted.
Make a motion to combine all conferences.
All right, we have a motion and a second to combine 7.1 through 7.4. Does anybody have any questions on any of the conferences or the attendance or anything? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Continuing on to committee items. 8.1, the Athletic Co-Curricular Community Relations Committee, which met on August 28th. We're asking the board to accept the minutes of this committee as submitted.
All right, thank you for that. Mr. Lappick, coming to everybody's aid there, otherwise we'd be here all night. We have a motion and a second to approve the 8.1. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. So ordered without objection.
Moving on to 8.2, Curriculum Integration and Technology Committee meeting was held August 28th as well. We're asking the board to accept these minutes as submitted.
Oh, I heard a second. Over here. That was Tina. So we have a motion and a second. Look at that, people coming out of their shell. Are there any questions or comments on the meeting minutes? No, if not, then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Very good.
Okay, moving on to 8.3, Operations and Facilities. Tonight, we're asking for a report of Operations and Facilities that was held on September 11th.
Oh, you're asking for a report?
Yes, sir.
Oh, is that, okay, fine. And I set it aside, so I'd have it, and there it is. It only looks random. All right, so we got a list of the 2018 and 2019 capital requests as it notes, and we looked at those, and it's a long list. And there's a big number at the bottom. So we've got that for consideration. If any of the board members do not have it and would like to have it, please let me know, and I'll get that for you so we can go through any sort of questions that you might have on those projects. We are going to discuss them in detail and start to prioritize them. So once we get them sort of prioritized, then we'd like to bring them to the entire board to say, yes, we agree, or why on earth did you come up with this?
Yeah, you can rule me out of order, but if you feel that I am. But I just have a question. Could we get an update on my favorite topic, the bridge to nowhere over nothing?
Hold on there, young fella. Let me do my minutes.
Okay.
Item number 2 of the minutes was Mr. Cardwell presented an update on the Pottsgrove Middle School pedestrian bridge. And it was all bad news. And he presented me with a letter from the professional engineer, and I looked at the letter all makes sense to me. There were some things I would change, and every one of them costs money. You know, some of the reinforcing, some of the spacing on the reinforcing, some of the things he's talking about, they're minor things, but there we are. And the maximum cost projection for this project is $350,000. You'll probably remember we talked about this before, and it was maybe a fraction of that.
10%.
10%. So this is surprising. The condition of the structure was much worse than we anticipated, and a lot of that was because, and just because the truth is the truth, most of it was covered with a soffit. We didn't see the true extent of the damage, and when we got the soffit, as we were trying to go ahead and do the project, we took the soffit down and said, oh, no, right? It's pretty much like one of those termite commercials you see on TV. It's basically what happened here. As I said, the recovery plan, I guess that's not really the right word, but the plan that we've got now is going to fix the issues that led to that. We're going to address almost all of them, and with my fixes, we'll address the rest of them. And I think we'll be in good shape. I hope that we're working. I didn't give you a chance to talk about this in front of everybody, but if you'd like to, tell us what kind of room there is in that 350 and what that's based on, and maybe that's a high-end projection to recover for the low end, and we're going to average in the middle.
Yes, that is the very worst-case scenario, 350,000. That was estimated out by the engineer. This Friday, we actually broadened our vendor search, so 3 more vendors are coming out Friday to take a look at the bridge with the engineering report to get a better pricing than what we have presented to us. The vendor who first looked at the project had came up with a $250,000 price range. There are some things in there I think I wanted to dive in deeper. Some of the scheduling of the work, we had said for it to start at 3 o'clock. So in the afternoon, so I'm assuming that's premium hours involved in there, on the weekend premium hours, and just some of the other details in their proposal I had questioned on. So I'm hoping this Friday we can put a better scope together on cost by line item with all three vendors developing some kind of response back to the district. My goal would be to get the price down to like $150. So 150 to 200,000 in that range, and that's what I'm thinking we can replace the bridge with.
All right. Thank you for that.
Can I ask something real quick? You said that they're gonna be working after 3 o'clock and on weekends. Is that what the proposal was, or is that what you are proposing?
No, that's what was proposed in the beginning, because we were
Okay.
coming into school
Right.
starting time. One thing I did share with Mr. Nestor, I think we need to look at if it is a premium cost associated with it, and some of that was extended out, the project taking 5 weeks long with that time span. I questioned that and said, I think we could have put a bridge across 422 a little faster than that, so.
I've been watching and we can't.
I know, right? But if it could come down to where, hey, we can expedite this if you gave us full days of work, and then we might have to relocate some students that are close by the bridge because of the noise and so forth. So I want to try to look at other means as well to not have work done on premium time, but at the same time with less impact or the least amount of impact for student and staff in the building. Unfortunately, the timing wasn't the best for us to find the worst case scenario. School started, so.
Okay, this is real quick. You know there's an election coming, and the only usage I can think of as a bridge is, it's the entrance for the polling place. So I'm,
Between the locker rooms, I think is where.
And that's the
well,
entrance we use.
they do go over the
Yep.
bridge.
No, they don't use the bridge. They use the entrance right into the gym area.
Okay,
on the
you're gonna,
side there.
yeah, I know that's an easy fix.
Yep, and that's what was used in the past too. So they're going to continue to use
Okay.
what they used last year.
Okay.
The question I had about was the timing constraint. You said after 3 o'clock, and I was thinking because of children being in the area, I was thinking they should be in classroom, and that'd probably be a safe time, but you're saying because of the noise. Picking up my kids from afternoon soccer practice at 5 o'clock, there's usually a few buses and kids, multiple sports running all over that area, so I don't know that that's necessarily a good time either, so it just.
Right, it almost seems like I said, displacing some students, getting started at 6 o'clock in the morning and trying to finish up, by 2 or 3, get a good 8-hour start in, pack up your things, put them in a safe place in a parking lot, move out before the buses and after-school activities. So, but of course, I'll bring that back to the full body, saying this is, communicate with Dr. Shirk, this is how long it'll, take for this project, this is how many classrooms will be affected, and so forth. So the school itself, parents, and the administration and board can be aware of that.
Right. Very good. Thank you for that update. And I like your goal of 150,000. I like that just fine. We'll see what we can do there. And it says here, stay. We provided an overview of the 2018 capital projects. Like the capital requests and the capital projects, indicate the playground asphalt resurfacing in West Pottsgrove remains pending due to the weather. And I guess you probably couldn't pave today either.
Correct.
Wow, just excuses all the time.
That task will get done. It might be pushed off to the spring or something like that, but it'll get done.
You're getting to within about 4 weeks of all the asphalt plants.
Asphalt's close, yes.
So, all right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And lastly, we covered item number 3. There's 2 twos, so this item at the bottom of the page. We talked about the lead, achieving the lead goal. We talked about that at the last school board meeting, so we can crow about that once more if you want to, or we can just move on to the next one.
I prefer the latter.
Okay. And inform the committee that we're going to release bids for school buses and vans, and we have an alternate for an extra van. Of course, that's part of our normal cycle of replacing buses and vans on a routine basis. Remember, we control when things get replaced based on the wear and our judgment, not somebody else's. So those are the minutes. I think we've addressed most of the questions. Anybody have any other questions?
One last question was how, obviously, the full capital plan is not all going to get approved right away. It's just, a lot of different things in there. But how is that looking in comparison to our overall capital funds budget and how we're looking at budgeting-wise going forward?
Well, this year's projects at the middle school took a significant toll on our reserves. So, we just have to keep focusing on that and taking funds that are available when they become available and putting them in that area so that we're able to continue the projects. We're down between $5 and $6 million, I believe, in overall. Don't hold me to that because I didn't look it up today. That's an off the cuff of funds in the capital reserve. Overall, we were looking at about a $15 million spend, so we're down to about a third.
Right. So there we are. So you asked for a report.
Thank you.
So there's your report. We don't have to take any action on that?
Nope.
Okay, because they're draft minutes. All right, fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. Lingren. At this time, we can move to new business.
Can we? Do you have any new business for us?
Actually, I have one thing to add.
There you are. Please, proceed.
I wanted to share with the board that last Friday, I got invited to the School Safety Roundtable that was held by the Senate Majority Caucus in Pennsylvania. Senator Bob Manchin, who has been a friend of mine really since for about 12 years, obviously, invited us to this event. I had the opportunity to take two students with me. Brenna Mayberry went along, as well as Josh Ross from Student Government. And I just want to say that the roundtable was a series of roundtables of interested stakeholders in school safety throughout the state of Pennsylvania. So we were just one of the stops along the way, and the senators that were there were part of the group were Senator David Argyle. He's the Senate Majority Policy Committee person, Senator Mensch, Senator Mike Regan, and Representative Craig Statz from our area. And we had the opportunity to share, with the group what we currently do as far as school safety goes. And I must say that I had the opportunity to share right out of the gate, and I really found that we are above our constituents in our area. That's North Penn, Solderton, Quakertown, the things that we're doing and have done already when it comes to talking about ALICE training in 2016, to practicing our drills in 2017, and having an all-out drill at the end of last school year in 18, really has put us in the forefront and given us the ability to continue. I share with them our commitment we made to radios and our continued commitment we make to upgrade our camera systems. Senator Regan was very impressed with what we've done and really applauded us and our preparation piece and the practice piece that we do with our staff and our students. So I wanted to share that with the board. I also wanted to share that Brenna and Josh did a tremendous job representing our schools. They were first in. Actually, Quakertown, they were the host. They had 2 students, and Pottsgrove had 2 students, and all the others had the same opportunity we did to participate, and they chose not to. But they did a great job representing us. They had a great vision which made me feel good because the vision that we have for school safety and our building administrators trickled right down to our students. They understand the why we do what we do. So I just wanted to, congratulate Brenna and Josh here publicly, let you know that we were at the forefront of that meeting. And Brenna, is there anything you wanted to add with your thoughts regarding that event?
I thought it was a fascinating experience. I think they had lots of good ideas, lots of good bills that they proposed. I think will make a big difference and be very helpful in not only making schools safer, but making people feel safer in schools.
And I thought the interesting question that they ask is about how you feel about feeling safe in schools. And if I remember your answer correctly, was I think about kids never had to think about being safe in school before. I never had to think about it. I got on the bus, I got there, it was a great time to learn and have experiences with, with the whole academic process. So that piece alone was very eye-opening. It was very eye-opening to the senators as well. And the pieces that Pottsgrove has in place helps that. It's not, we can't guarantee it 100%, which I really wish I could do that for everybody around this table, most important are students, but I thought that piece was interesting of what the students come to school with, and the thought, so, obviously we're going to continue to do, the things we need to do. The Safe Schools Partnership was another point of pride really for us, and the senators recognized that they thought that community involvement was a really good point of emphasis for us to bring the whole and the whole community and accomplish that piece as well. So I just, again, wanted to share. We were represented very well. It was a point of pride for us. And, Senator Mensch has been one to do a really good job. I like to think because of the relationship that I've built with him, he does listen. When you think about grassroots, you never think if someone listening to you or not, and I really believe Senator Mensch does listen, and he has the ability to bring other people with him. And he did. He brought Senator Regan with him, obviously, and Senator Argyle with him as well. So it was a good day for us. I just wanted to share that out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. My other go-to?
Yes, two things. We just received the survey results that was done. Thank you for that. I didn't bring the full survey with me, but it looked like we got about a C in the results in regards to a couple areas, but specifically what can the district do to improve or in regards to academic achievement, where they feel we are. And what I did miss seeing was a breakdown, percentage of teachers felt this way, percentage of students felt this way, percentage of parents felt this way. That might have given us a different feel, but what I'm posing to the board, or suggesting to the rest of the board, is that we take this a step further, at least in regards, or especially with our teachers, and say, hey, we just did this survey. This is, we got 70 whatever percent, feel we're doing a great job academically, and then just leave it open to them. What are your thoughts? Because we don't know how many of them gave us a C versus a 70 versus an 80, 90, 100. What are your thoughts? From what you see at the ground level, what can we do to improve? I would like to hear back from those right there, right on the front line, from the teachers, specifically to academic achievement, but maybe there's other areas from the survey we want to ask them too. Other thoughts on that? And I don't know if Mrs. Delano wants to share an opinion.
We can surely do those task-specific things. That we can do that piece. But we do our surveys with the autonomy. So, and I will say we had 100% of our teachers weigh into this per building. We did at a building level. So if we attach teacher-specific or building-specific, I say, look, we're not tracing you, we're not tracking you. I don't know if we would get the results that we want. They could be tainted. I don't know for sure. If there's specific things that like we want to ask, I think we could ask. We can do that. We can do it as a separate piece.
And that's what I mean.
Okay.
Good point. I mean to follow up. Hey, we've done this survey. Board has looked at it. Board's curious to hear more from you, specifics. If you don't want to share, you don't share. That's fine. But any feedback that you want to provide to the board of what can be improved.
And Mr. Parr, there was a couple questions that I looked at as there's the triangulation in a couple of the questions. Sure, there was the overall, and I don't have it in front of me either, so I apologize for that. But there was an overall rating that the district received from everybody, which was really very similar to last year. And we always try to, we want to always have that tick up, no doubt. But when you looked at like the several other questions behind that piece were, the quality of education pieces, and there was a couple others, and I apologize for not knowing it, but we could get that to you. The triangulation of it all was very similar, and it was really above that 70 70 mark. When we asked somebody to pinpoint it, that's what they did. But the data, as far as the educational value and what we do in the classrooms and instruction pieces and the tech integration pieces was all rated very high. So, I mean, I could put that together more of how it looks in those three. I don't know, maybe you did it yourself. I mean, that's sort of what I looked at like the big, like questions 4, 5, and 6 and how that related to the overall, and you know, thought they gave us a pretty good indicator how we're serving our community. So, but yeah, I would just need a little bit, you know, more direction from everybody if that's something that they'd want to see, so that I can get the specific information that you want.
Just a quick question, are we going to be presenting that survey or results to the public?
I did. I sent the survey out along with the summarization last week.
For the email part?
Yes.
I'm saying, are we going to do it for the board meeting?
Wasn't
plans on it?
I wasn't planning on it because we sent it out that way.
Okay. The only reason is because Bill brought it up, there were, I mean, I don't want to chew at it now because it's
Right.
something that probably we caught, but there are a lot of areas where the way the mathematics and the survey numbers came out, we actually did better than what you're reporting because you had the skew wrong. You were going 1 to 5, when number 5 generally shouldn't even been part of the skew. So you were giving yourselves the wrong numbers throughout most of the questions. I don't want to bring it up now. And the last question, you know, and the last question, I did. But I'm saying, I don't want to bring it in. And the last question, you put it on after, which was supposed to be our overall number, but it was after the employee section. So a lot of people ended up having to skip that section. So you may want to move that up. See, I didn't want to go through and piecemealing it unless you were going to do it to the public. That's the only reason I brought it up now.
Yeah, along those lines, how long have you been doing this survey or something comparable? This is year 2, okay.
He started pretty much.
Because you really want to look at a historical perspective and, you know, if you had 5, 10 years worth of data, it might be a lot more interesting.
Okay. I have an unrelated, but for Dave. Do we rent out the middle school parking lot for student driving companies? Or do we just, I mean, or I'm not actually asking whether we should be doing that. I mentioned, I was reminded about the bridge when I was picking my twins up from soccer practice. There was, you know, buses and kids running about to cars. And then off to the side, I saw these 4 cones with a car in it, and it said student driving company or for some, and I just thought the sanity of having a student driver while there were a lot of children, you know, might not be the best thing at that time.
I will say the answer to your question is we have not authorized any use of our facilities by driving training companies.
I mean, I think it's a great place to do it, but not at that time. Okay. I don't remember. It just, I was more concerned about not having children than that. And I thought that was the priority. But it was like these 4 big cones, and this, you know, student driver, you know, some company, but I'll
So I know
keep an eye on
Patachios does the student driving program out of the Western Center, that our students, any student that attends the school that attends the Western Center can enroll in it. It's actually, it's a fantastic program. So, I want to say I paid, I want to say it was somewhere around, it was 2 years ago, so I don't quite remember. But it's worth every penny, regardless of what I paid. But they work out of the out of the Western Center, and that's where they actually do the test. But anybody who's of driving age, and you can do it, do it. They actually, I didn't have to be in the passenger seat when my daughter first did the cattle chutes on 422, so that was worth every penny. Every penny.
Okay, my last one. It was mentioned earlier in regards to a local district going through some pretty big problems with mold. So just a question for Mr. Caldwell. What do we do proactively to both prevent and monitor?
So our staff, starting with the custodians first, make sure that the horizontal and vertical space of every room and surface in the school is clean to eliminate the feeding process or food for mold, which is dust and dirt. So that's the first thing. Our mechanical staff monitors our HVAC equipment to make sure that we're keeping our relative humidity in range and our temperature to avoid the possibility of growth in our HVAC system. Every day, custodians, grounds, and maintenance people keep their eyes open and ears open, meaning they're looking for water intrusion, mold growth, or listening to the staff who may identify a possibility of mold. We also use our external vendors to make sure that our automated systems that control our HVAC system are going through a preventive maintenance check. Our staff does preventive maintenance, changing air filters, inspecting our rooftop units on a regular basis, as well as last year we had the entire facility staff trained in mold awareness, and this training was done by a certified environmental company. And as well as all of our maintenance and grounds staff are certified to remediate up to 4 square feet of mold if it's identified. The biggest challenge with mold is actually, like I said, keeping your eyes and ears open. As soon as you see it or see water intrusion, you have to get on it, see where the water is coming in, the intrusion, stop it, identify the possibility, and move any porous material away from it. And that could be dirt. It could just store, like I said, have growth. The challenge is we could do that every day, but within 72 hours, you can have mold growth in a building. So if something happened on Friday night, come back on Monday, you can have mold growing. So that's why it's key to have your staff continuously look for water intrusion and mold growth.
Thank you. I think like safety, my guess is we're steps ahead other districts in the area. So I do appreciate you and your department being proactive in that area.
And I understand that we actually have some answers to the questions I had earlier in our discussion piece about the supplemental. So I'm going to ask Mr. Dorenzo and Mrs. Delaney to step up and give those answers back to the board.
In an attempt not to make this meeting any longer, we inadvertently did not have the attachment, the updated attachment. What you saw was the historical perspective of the matrix, which was the original numbers, and this is the supplemental that's current. So all those numbers and point values are accurate. So that was why we were a little confused. It was a technology glitch, so to speak, and controls technology is human. So we had an inadvertent glitch here. So you have the accurate packet coming around right now.
Your description sounded like operator error.
It was operator
Okay.
error. We're taking full responsibility
All right.
for it.
That's correct.
We believe in ownership. That's the
Okay.
spirit of collaboration
That's
here.
right.
That's why we both came to the table.
You know, there's absolutely none among us who are perfect, so it's
Pardon
fine.
me?
It's nobody's perfect, so
Oh,
you're
no.
doing fine.
No,
Certainly not us.
no.
One of the things that you can notice, though, on the document you're getting is that if there is a name attached to it, then that position is filled by that person. If there is no name attached, that position is not currently filled.
And if there's a DNF, that was one of the positions that was eliminated through either attrition or we renegotiate a new position.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for your due diligence and for taking a look at that and getting us the answer so very quickly. We do appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions on the revised? No. Okay, does that finish the board and all hangers on? Okay, so At this point, I think we go to we did the answers, so now I can
Yeah.
go to open public
Yeah, you can.
public
So,
comment?
Yep, sure.
Can I please?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to open up for public comment on the new business, the three things that we did, plus any other questions on any of the decisions that we've already made for this evening. Is any? Yes.
Mr. President, I'm happy to report that the supplemental conversation on the supplementals has already answered my question.
So noted. That's right. But it is a team effort, you know? We're checking each other and getting everything and report it out. So thanks very much for that and for your diligence and everybody's participation. Having come to the end of what's written on my paper, I think a motion to adjourn would be in order. So moved. Thank you, Tina, stepping up. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those moved, you've been overvoted.